introduce my colleague, Bob Coleman, who is a sustainability specialist at the City of Chula Vista, and he's going to kick it off with NatureScape. Take it away, Bob.
Thank you, Colleen. Again, my name is Bob Coleman. I'm with the City of Chula Vista, and we're going to talk about NatureScape today in the next hour. I hope you'll find this intriguing and interesting. And let's take the next slide, please. Again, my name is Bob Coleman. You can see I'm there, the hat and the shirt, and I'm a sustainability specialist with the city. Today, I'm going to focus on the NatureScape side of our webinar, and Doug Roberts, program specialist with Sweetwater Authority, he's going to focus on water smart irrigation. Next slide, please. Just a few things I want to go over about today's webinar. We're going to also have an audience poll, and we'll get to that. So you have an opportunity to participate. I'm going to talk a little bit about the background, about the NatureScape program and why create one. Also going to get into the 5 steps of natural yard care, which is really the foundation of the NatureScape program. You can see them listed there. We'll be talking about them individually as well throughout the webinar. And also, again, to emphasize water smart irrigation, Doug's going to cover that in great detail. So any questions or answers, as Colleen has explained, that's do it at the bottom in the question area and answer area. We're going to have a poll question. So the first poll question should be coming up on your screen. So the first question is, have you been to an in-person NatureScape workshop in the past? Yes or no? You have about 20 seconds to go. We're waiting for the results. They should be there soon. Okay, well, it looks like about 25% of the audience has been to a NatureScape presentation in the past. That's great to know. For the rest of you, this is your introduction, and we hope you'll take it to the next level and visit our website in the very near future. So the next poll question, please. Have you ever visited the City of Chula Vista's NatureScape website? Again, yes or no? Wow, that's great to hear. It looks like over 70% has been to the website. Keep it up. And for the rest of you who haven't, again, I'm going to be pushing that on you. I highly recommend checking it out. We have one more poll question. Are you considering or are you in the process of making changes to the landscape in your yard? Again, yes, no. Wow, looks like everybody is considering that, doing some change as well. That's really great. This is going to really be helpful for you to give you a good baseline today. Next slide, please. Well, NatureScape program began in 2006 with conducting in-person workshops, and the emphasis has always been the 5 key steps of natural yard care, which you're going to see. Another key thing about the program is it really helps to meet City of Chula Vista goals, and in 2 ways in particular. One is the city's climate action plan. NatureScape workshops and educational opportunities are called out in that plan, and those will help to reduce greenhouse gases. NatureScape has a role in that. And second is the city's water stewardship plan. And this is a plan for cities, municipal buildings, as well as businesses and residents to educate them to use water more efficiently. And yes, NatureScape workshops and online learning opportunities are part of that actions of the water stewardship plan. And also, NatureScapes here in Chula Vista, put together by residents, helps enhance the multiple species conservation area. Well, this is an area that is in Otay Ranch to the north and to the east, and there are 3 in the county, in South County, North County, and also within the city of San Diego, there are some areas. And so in South County, it's a preserve of 7,600 acres. So by people doing NatureScapes, it will attract the kinds of critters that are also live in the multiple species conservation areas. So NatureScapes, done by residents, actually enhances multiple species conservation area. And just so you know, San Diego County is home to the widest variety of animal species in the country. So we can really help that conservation area by creating NatureScapes. Next slide, please. In 2018, with our funding partner, Sweetwater Authority, we took NatureScape to a new level. So in the program, we were able to develop a flagship brochure that year, as well as create the website. The website goes into pretty good depth, more than the brochure, with lots of links that I'd recommend you check out. And last year, we were able to conduct a workshop in May at South Bay Botanical Garden, at Southwestern College. And we also created a case study of a Chula Vista NatureScape of a Chula Vista resident, and that is going to be part of the webinar today. And so today, in lieu of, we're doing the webinar because of course, the pandemic, we're unable to have a in-person workshop. So next slide, please. Some of the big benefits of doing a NatureScape, it benefits yourself as well as the environment, is some landscapes are able to achieve certified wildlife habitat status. And it's a simple process to get certified. And to date, since 2006, nearly 600 landscapes have been certified as wildlife habitats throughout Chula Vista. And last year in 2019, Chula Vista was listed 5th in the USA for the most certified wildlife habitat sites by the National Wildlife Federation, which we are affiliated with in getting habitats certified. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, wildlife habitat certification, there are 4 key criteria. One of them is food for insects, birds, and animals. So this could be anything from bird feeders to having plants that are evergreen trees and vines and grass-like plants and lots of nectars and that sort of thing, and even fruit trees. Second, you need a water source. That can be anything from a bird bath to a little pond in yard, or even putting out pans of water for wildlife to have. And also 3, cover and protection for animals. And this could be anything from just lots of dense shrubs or a thicket, or even could be a pile of rocks, a pile of logs, place where they have cover to stay away from predators. And 4 is a place to raise their young. This can be trees in your yard or even your neighbor's yard. Within 50 feet is considered part of your habitat. So if you don't have a big tree in your yard, maybe neighbors do, even small trees as well. So it's trees and other things like that, where they can have a place to be protected and raise their young. Next slide, please. Before we go any further, I really want to put some things into a different perspective and context and take a couple of minutes to talk about our relationship with nature. This information comes from a book titled The Nature Fix by Florence Williams, and that book is available in the Chula Vista libraries. And the research presented in the book tries to make sense of this relationship in an enlightening and entertaining manner. So first, some facts. 93% of the time, we spend indoors or in our vehicles. And research shows that joy of people is reported greater in natural settings than in urban settings. So this joy of being in natural settings is greater than the difference people experience from being alone versus being with friends. Also, this joy is about the same as doing favorite activities like singing or sports versus not doing these things. So we should do more of what makes our brains happy. We should be outside more and we should enjoy greenery. Also, avoiding nearby nature causes people to underestimate its true pleasurable benefits. Researchers have shown how people have habitat preferences, such as people like to go to parks, kids like to build tree houses and forts, people like to go to the beach, people like to hike on trails out in nature. And interestingly, people also like to make their homes and yards a certain way. And this is all remarkably consistent across cultures and different eras. Also, the confluence of demographics and technology has pivoted us further away from nature than any generation before us. At the same time, we're increasingly burdened by chronic ailments made worse by time indoors, from myopia and from vitamin D deficiency, from a lack of sunlight, and also obesity, depression, loneliness, and anxiety. And in today's world, with the pressures of the pandemic coinciding with online activity of the internet, many experts argue we've grown more irritable, less sociable, more narcissistic, more distracted, and even less cognitively nimble. So there are times we could all be a little less reactive, a little more empathetic, more focused, and more grounded. And many researchers have shown that a dose of nature can help alleviate things that ail us. So where does this leave us today? The point being that you can create a naturescape of your own. And it's great to see from the poll that 10 people are considering changing their landscape or modifying it. So you can create that naturescape. And ideally, naturescape can be an extension of your home and bring you outside to enjoy the solitude of nature in your own yard. Next slide, please. Creating a naturescape really extends your living space. I'm really big on that. I enjoy it myself in my own yard. It gives you an opportunity to create a new plan, modify, or start over, redesign your yard, and create the yard that you want to enjoy. Another key thing we like to stress is either reduce or eliminate grass areas. And that gives you an opportunity to put in plants that will make as part of the naturescape and have a little bit more variety and such, and to attract those critters. And also, having a naturescape will help you save water. Grass happens to be usually the biggest user of water in a yard. And again, you'll be providing beneficial habitat for wildlife. Next slide, please. The benefits of a naturescape, as I've mentioned already, creating a spot in your yard to extend your home, basically. But anyway, when you get this done, then overall you'll save a lot of time, you're going to save money, and you're going to save a lot of water. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the 5 steps of natural yard care, here they are listed again. And building healthy soils, plant right for your site, water smart irrigation, toxic free pest control, and lawn care, grass cycling. I'm going to talk all about these. Next slide, please. Building healthy soils, the first step. In real estate, they say location, location, location. Well, with healthy soils, I like to say compost, compost, compost. Fertile, nourished soil is the foundation of a healthy yard and garden. Healthy soil provides air, water, nutrients for plants, and serves as nature's environmental protector, and plays a part in reducing greenhouse emissions by removing carbon dioxide from the air and storing it in the soil. Carbon is a vital component of rich soil. And the best way to improve soil's health is by adding compost. Compost works on any soil. It helps sandy soils hold nutrients and water, and it loosens clay soils. Compost is the dark, rich, organic material produced by controlled natural decomposition of organic material, such as leaves, grass, clippings, pruning, and fruit and vegetable scraps, which we all have a lot of at home. You can make your own compost, and I'm going to let you know that on August 27th, pitching the Compost 101 It's a sustainable series webinar. So that's 2 weeks from today, 4 to 5. And you can learn a lot about compost there. And also the city has 3 free giveaway days of compost. And I just learned that the August 29th free day is going to happen unless something comes up. And so it's definitely on for now. So you can get more information on that from the Clean website. Also, it's best to mix compost into your soil. And it's easy to do. Spread it 2 to 4 inches thick over the soil and turn it with a shovel to a depth of about 6 inches. And it's also important to top dress any planted areas. Apply compost. It serves as a natural fertilizer. Spread to a depth of around 3 inches at the base of plants and shrubs, much like mulch. And you can also use compost throughout your landscape as a fertilizer and to also help keep the weeds down. So compost is a good mulch. Next slide, please. Plant right for your site. I wanted to explain a few things first and show you these different areas around the world. There are Mediterranean climates in 5 spots around the world. And so Mediterranean climate is what we have here in Chula Vista and San Diego, and actually in Baja California as well. And a Mediterranean climate is really pleasant with warm, dry summers and cool, mild winters. And its unique climatic regimes of these mild, wet winters and warm, dry summers occurs in just these five regions. You can see Mediterranean basin, of course, here, central Chile and West Cape of South Africa and Southwest and South Australia. And this cause of this climate is directly related to the large body of waters. For us, the Pacific, and the other oceans in the Mediterranean Sea. So the reason I wanted to explain this will give you an opportunity to select plants that actually thrive in those areas, will thrive here in Chula Vista and San Diego. In the next few slides, I'm going to show you some chaparral areas, is representative of chaparral type plants, but it also, the idea is that plants that are flowering plants and other trees and such from these areas will also thrive here as well. Next slide, please. This is a chaparral area in the Mediterranean. It looks quite a bit like what we have here and even some of our canyons here in Chula Vista. Next slide, please. This is chaparral in Chile. As you can see, very similar to what we have here in San Diego and Chula Vista. Next slide, please. In South Africa, again, very similar. So trying to make the point that you can find plants from these different regions of the world that'll do very well here. There will be drought saving and drought and California friendly as well. Next slide, please. Western Australia as well. You can see some of the plants in the foreground are very similar to what you see growing here already, people have put in, and very similar to natives is here as well. Next slide, please. So in planning right for your site, a couple things I wanted to really point out. A really good resource is the new Sunset Western Garden book. It's a great book, and a lot of nurseries use this as their key resource. And so in Chula Vista, there are 2 climate zones we are in, and these are the numbers from the Western Garden book. In 24, zone 24, that's along the coast, the coastal areas, and this is really influenced and dominated by the ocean. And so this is, it can also stretch inland to ways where there's no barriers and such. So these are usually where it's foggier mornings and then there's burn off. And in 23, that's where it's a lot warmer, not a lot of burn off going on, if any. And so it's definitely warmer. And so these areas are in Chula Vista. If I had to draw a line north to south, I would say a couple of miles or so east of 805 would be about where that boundary of those are, but they can intersect. Also, you really need to get to know your yard. You're going to have microclimates there. You got to identify the sunny and shady areas and the damp and dry areas. And again, selecting plants, it's best to go for climate appropriate, drought tolerant plants. It can either be native or they can also be California friendly and Mediterranean types, as I mentioned. A great guide is the Nifty 50 Plant Guide for Water Smart Landscapes. This has been produced by San Diego County Water Authority, and I highly recommend checking it out. We have a link to that at the Chula Vista NatureScape website as well. You can request them from the county. We do have some in the office, but we could, if you really want one, we'll try to get one to you. Just let us know. Also, it's really important to group your plants with similar needs. Full sun, partial sun, shade only. You don't want to intermix those because you will not have success. Yeah, it's really a common sense thing. So you really need to identify what type of conditions those plants will thrive in. And the way to do that is that website at the bottom bullet. It's also listed as a link at the NatureScape website. And that will tell you what the size plants will get mature, and it'll also let you know their water needs. So that's very, very important resource to check out. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about water smart irrigation. As I mentioned, Doug is going to cover this in detail, but I want to make a few points. Make every drop count. You really need to be efficient with it. And about 60% of our total water use in our home goes to our yards. So keep that in mind. Also, there's a list here of different techniques you can use for irrigating. I just wanted to point out one, the laundry to landscape. That's a great way where you can have your clothes washer water parts of your yard. And we have information on that at the city. You can just let us know in the Q&A if you want to get us to get you that information. Next slide, please. Again, with Water Smart, avoid overwatering. A lot of people put way too much water on their yards to have success, and the plants might not need nearly as much as you might think. And also, irrigate an area long enough to get the entire root zone wet. And never apply water faster than the soil can absorb it. A quick example would be if you water plants, let's say you're watering with a hose by hand and it's ponded up, well then stop and let it absorb into the ground and come back later if it needs more. So that's the best way to do it. You'll save water and it gets down to the root system much more efficient. Next slide, please. The fourth thing in natural yard care is toxic-free pest control. The best way to do this to start is build that healthy soil, because healthy soil has the organisms that will protect plants from disease, and it can avoid a lot of insect pest problems. Using mulch controls a lot of weeds, and also I highly recommend avoiding chemical pesticides, because what happens is about 90% of the bugs are the good bugs, and 10% are the bad bugs. So if you use those, you're going to kill a lot of the good bugs, so it can be self-defeating. Select plants that also attract the good bugs, and also consider repelling plants that will repel pests. You can see the list there: dill, garlic, onion, fennel, sage, and the rest. These will help to do that, and they're also edible as well. And also, you can make your own sprays, natural sprays to kill unwanted pests. On the website, NatureScape website, we have a link to that to where you can get recipes to do that. Next slide, please. Grass cycling. Talk about natural yard care. Lawns tend to take the most time, a lot of time and energy to maintain, and they use the highest amount of water often. So a good thing to do is you need to make sure your lawn to thrive has proper nutrients. So with grass cycling, what you do is you're leaving the clippings in the lawn. If you have a mulching mower, that's ideal. Take the bag off, set it to mulching, and go. If you have one that isn't, take the bag off and just let the clippings go. And same with a push mower. And ideally, you want to do it, take another step than this picture is showing. This picture is showing grass clippings that are already decomposing. It doesn't take long, it takes a few days. They'll look like this. But I recommend mowing over it again to get them smaller. And then if that doesn't, you're not satisfied and you have little areas like this, just spread them out with a rake, because they'll get down to the surface of the soil and then they'll decompose and they'll act as a natural fertilizer. You can also top your lawns with compost a couple of times a year, a layer of compost. And also, it's real important to get down on your hands and knees, use a good weed puller, and pull the weeds. Using weed and feed products can be self-defeating because often people have a mix of grasses in the yard, so they use the weed and feed and they're killing their lawn because it could be composed of grasses that the weed killer thinks is a weed. So again, it's hard work. Weed and feed, no. get down on the hands and knees, pull it out, do it on a shady day, in a shady place or early in the morning. It'll be more comfortable. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, I wanted to show you some naturescapes around Chula Vista. Rosie Perez is the case study, her home that's on the website. It's a great story. I highly recommend you clicking that link and reading that story. This is her front yard, and this is an all native garden in front, all native plants. So it's a good idea, I think, to have a native area and then an area with other plants. You can intermix, but I think they'll thrive better if you separate. Next slide, please. This is the entrance garden at Rosie's house. It's on the opposite side wall of the native garden. And you can see here, she has some plants that are in pots, which is fine. Having your naturescape with potted plants is just a great way to go. It also gives you the flexibility to move the plants around to find the ideal place for them to grow in your yard. Next slide, please. This is Rosie's butterfly grove. She lives on a corner. So this is on the one side of the corner. And you can see the sidewalk and the streets right there. And the plants all in here attract butterflies, lots of butterflies. And that's really a passion with Rosie. So that's an area where you can have dedicated plants. Next slide, please. This is another area in her yard, the patio area. And you can see some close-ups. Again, she applies potted plants and some, you can see she's got compost on the lower right picture. She's got a lot of compost there she's using to keep the weeds out and such and nourish the plants. And in the big picture, you see the umbrella, and that plant right behind the umbrella is a large honeysuckle plant that grows pretty, she has a wild look to hers, and it all kinds of birds and butterflies and critters come in there and visit. It's pretty neat. So you really want to attract that wildlife. Next slide, please. These are some other naturescapes in Chula Vista. This is an example of one that's using the desert look with all kinds of mostly cactus. Next slide, please. This is similar to the last one. It has more succulents than the last one. And succulents really, really are a great way to save on water. Next slide, please. This is actually here in Chula Vista, across the street from Discovery Park. This is the Rice Canyon demonstration garden. And this is just one picture of some of the plants there that you could put in your yard as well. There's several little areas, little gardens there at Rice Canyon to take a look at. And there's also posted literature with information as well and signage. You can also take a stroll down the canyon, and it's a nice 3.5-mile hike. Also, I highly recommend visiting the water conservation garden out at Cuyamaca College. It is open now, and I believe it is. You can double check by giving them a call. And there's all kinds of great examples of what you can do to create your naturescape. Next slide, please. Again, I can't push enough about how it's great to have a naturescape to attract wildlife. I'm happy to say that these pictures I took in July in my own backyard, you can see the bird and the butterflies. We had tons of butterflies this year. It was pretty amazing. And also a raccoon. He was there early in the morning. He comes at night, usually after dark. And he was there in the morning that day. And I did take that picture from inside. I wasn't going to bother him. And he likes our avocados. He comes, he'll eat a half avocado, leave it, and come back the next day. So pretty interesting. It's great to watch that sort of stuff. Next slide, please. Again, if you want to know more, there's the NatureScape website, and we're going to have contact information at the very end, so you can catch it there again as well. At the website, like I had mentioned, the nifty 50 plants and all kinds of tips and links, but I also wanted to emphasize San Diego County Water Authority has a guidebook, and it's online, and as well as lots of different videos about creating naturescapes. So I highly recommend checking that out. They're really done well. Some of them they're only 6-7 minutes a piece. There's a whole series on them. So I highly recommend that. Well, thank you.
Great, thanks, Bob. And I wanted to let folks know, I think we have one or two poll questions coming up during Doug's presentation, and they should pop up in the right side of your screen if you're viewing this in a computer, or there might be an alert at the buttons at the bottom. So check that once Doug announces some more poll questions. But with that, we'll pass it over to Doug Roberts from Sweetwater Authority.
Well, thank you, Colleen. Welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Doug Roberts. I am the program specialist here at Sweetwater Authority dealing with conservation. We're going to be speaking also on behalf of Otay Water District. But we'll go ahead and jump into the next slide. I want to be very respectful of your time. So if we could get the next slide, please. So a little bit about us, Sweetwater Authority. We have been providing safe, reliable water since 1977. We have a 32 square mile service area, approximately 192,000 customers, 2 dams, 2 reservoirs, multiple storage tanks and pump stations. We do have surface water treatment, groundwater desalination, freshwater wells, and imported water. Next slide, please. A little bit about Otay Water District. Otay provides potable water, recycled water, and wastewater services to more than 225,000 customers within a 125 square mile area. They include San Diego County, Chula Vista, Bonita, Jamul, Spring Valley, Rancho San Diego, and unincorporated areas of El Cajon and La Mesa and eastern Otay Mesa all the way down to the border. A little bit about the rebates. Each agency has overlapping rebates from the Metropolitan Water District, although we do have specific Sweetwater Authority rebates for our customers only. I would encourage you to reach out, if you're an Otay customer, to reach out to their conservation department if you have questions on rebates. And please feel free to contact me at Sweetwater Authority. At the end of this presentation, I'll have my contact information up. So with that, I believe we have a couple of poll questions before we get into that. So if we could put those poll questions up and then we'll move along. So first of all, I'd like to know who is your water district? Is it Sweetwater Authority, Otay Water District, maybe CalAm, or another provider? Maybe you're just listening in from another part of the county. So we'll go ahead and if you could just answer those, we'd really much appreciate it. All right, just give us a few seconds here and we'll get those tallied up. All right, so we got a little bit of Sweetwater, a little bit of Otay, and some others. Well, that's good to know that we're reaching a wide audience. I think there might be one more poll question, so we can get that going. What is your preferred method you would like to be contacted? We receive your information from your water utility. Is it through social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Nixle, or an email? And I think there are some other things down here. I can't really see it. But what's your preferred method? If you could just go ahead and let us know that, we would we'll go ahead and make those adjustments when we want to reach out and pass along messages. All right, email. Okay, that's duly noted. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the presentation here. Thank you for participation. And if we get the next slide, please. So we got 5, basically what I look for is 5 key components when I go out to a customer's property and try to help them with their irrigation efficiency. We just want to be sure that we're putting the right amount of water down at the right location, at the right time, at the right duration, and the right delivery method. Bob mentioned earlier the hydrozoning. Different plants have different watering requirements. We want to be sure that we put the same water requirement plants together. We don't want to mix and match because it's just going to affect the results of your landscape. So if you have, this is an extreme, if you have turf and cactus, those should be on separate zones. And most of this stuff is common sense. It's just nice to get a little refresher. The right location, plants take up the water through their root system, and you need to think about when you first installing plants, you need to think about future root growth. That root ball is going to get larger, so especially if you're using drip, a lot of people put one drip line right around the base of the plant, and then that's it. They don't think about as the plant grows, they need to expand that circle. Right time. Early mornings and late evenings is the best time to irrigate due to less evaporation, less wind distortion, and really depending on what part of the area that you live in. Like Bob mentioned, we do have many microclimates within our service area. It gets a lot warmer quicker out in the Bonita parts than it does here in the western parts of Chula Vista. The right duration. What type of soil do you have? If you have a sandy soil, your water is going to percolate very quickly. So you're going to have to do short little bursts to get it to hold right around that root area. If you have a slope, again, if you're watering and then all of a sudden you're seeing water running off your hillside, you've already exceeded your maximum runtime there. And all these things, you can always call us up at Sweetwater and ask for myself, and we'll gladly go over these things with you. OTI, again, if you reach out to OTI's Conservation Department, they'll have some folks out there that will help you also. And the last one, the right delivery method. Do you need a drip system? Do you need a spray system, a micro spray system, a bubbler, inline? There's a lot, the irrigation technology has very much advanced in the last 10 years to help customers maintain a very satisfactory landscape. Next slide, please. So real quickly, just some basic irrigation maintenance, some things that we all know about, but we sometimes forget with our busy lives and stuff. We don't really have time to think about these things. A lot of times people think about it when they get their water bill, and that's unfortunate. We try to get customers to think about it on a more regular basis. I would suggest you adjust or take a look at your irrigation schedule at least 3 times a year minimum. Sometimes you'll have to do that more because, again, we have microclimates. And if you have a property, you have a friend that lives on the western part of Chula Vista and one that lives out in the Bonita or Otay Ranch area, very different water requirements because of the heat. You want to check for leaks on your property. You want to fix any leaks very promptly if you can. Not only leaks that are obvious, but leaks around the irrigation heads, the wiper seals, the spray bodies. Is that spray body or spray head cracked? If you have a drip system, I highly encourage you to flush your drip system at least twice a year. Hopefully during the winter months, your drip system and all your irrigation is fairly turned off. You may use it once in a while, but hopefully it's non-existent during that time. And over those time periods, they can build up a little bit of sediment in the line. And then when you go to use it again, it's going to be less efficient. So I do encourage you to pull off a head or open up an emitter and give it a good flush, 1 or 2 minutes, just flush all that debris out, and then you should have a more robust and better operating system. You want to adjust your spray heads to prevent overspray on hardscapes, streets, sidewalks, fences, things of that nature. That's one of the biggest things that draws the attention of the water district is when we see runoff or water pooling up in the street. Also, not only those devices that are out in your yard you need to pay attention to, sometimes folks forget about their controller. Your controller plays a major part in your irrigation maintenance. Does it have a seasonal adjust feature or capability? Do you have what's called a cycle soak or a cycle delay or some type of delay feature that you can kind of what I call prepping the soil, where you give it its official wetting for say 5 minutes, get the soil nice and moist so it's ready to absorb, and then you do a little bit of a longer irrigating time. Does your controller have a terminal spot for a terminal sensor, whether that's a soil moisture sensor, a rain sensor, or a modified little weather station? Those are things that you should pay attention to, and also you should be changing the battery in your controller when you change your smoke alarm batteries, which we recommend for your controller at least twice a year. Because if you lose power, then you're going to lose your settings, and it just prevents a little bit of a headache in the future. So we go ahead and move to the next slide, please. Know what you're watering. Okay, are you watering your driveway, your fence, or are you actually watering the plants in the turf? You know, as you can see in this picture on the top left there was turf in that spot. It's a big dirt area, but they left the spray head like it was still turf. That's a no-no, but it happens. And as Bob mentioned, if you don't like pulling weeds, then you'll only go through one season because you're going to generate a lot of weeds when you're just irrigating that bare soil like that. The picture on the right, obviously there, it looks like there's a slope behind that bus stop there. The run times are set improperly. It's causing a lot of runoff. It could be thatch built up on the turf. It makes the soil impermeable. But those are the things that's going to draw the attention to the stormwater folks. That's going to draw attention from your neighbors and anyone passing by. And they're more than likely, we get the majority of our calls when we see that, and we trace the water back. And we just give a courtesy little knock or a courtesy call to the property and ask them, hey, you know, we've noticed there's some little bit of problems with your irrigation. Would you like some assistance? We don't have any punishment or anything like that. We truly want to educate and help customers use the water that they need, but we want them to keep it on their property and apply it to the plants. As you can see there in that fence, you know, no matter how much you spray that fence, it's not going to get any taller, but you can definitely see that pattern from the water bleaching the fence there. So we'll move on to the next slide. Again, just to reiterate, your overhead spray sprinklers, what you want to look for, broken or leaning sprinkler heads. That's going to affect the distribution and the uniformity of applying the water. You want to look for overspray. Is it misting instead of spraying? I'll show you a couple of pictures of that in the next slide, I believe. Do you have uneven coverage? Are your spray patterns being blocked by your plant material? A lot of times I'll go out to the property and oftentimes there's 4 or 5 heads that are tucked way behind either an agapantha or a lantana that's grown up, and it's blocking the spray patterns, and their customers are wondering why they have a dry spot. And what they typically do is increase their run times to try to mitigate that dry spot when all they really need to do is just trim out that vegetation. And that's basically all we're trying to do, is just give customers these quick little refreshers, that those aha moments. Yeah, I know that. And we're just here to help and hopefully get you guys on the right path to being more efficient. For subsurface irrigation problems, you want to look for excessively wet areas. We don't have too much subsurface here in the older parts of Chula Vista. That's more prevalent in the newer construction areas. You're looking for the same clues: mounding, soggy areas, water escaping from underneath sidewalks or turf. Those are all telltale signs that something's not right. Next slide, please. So again, as I mentioned, there was a little bit of some issues with misting. So turf, if you have turf, that's fine. We encourage you to keep your turf. If you want to take it out, that's great. There's multiple programs to assist with that. We just want you to use the water that you're using in the most efficient way possible. Now, in the top left-hand corner there, that is dealing with high pressure. One nice little gust of wind is going to take, I'd say, 60% of that water and transfer it right to your neighbor's property. So that's, your neighbor's going to appreciate it, but it's not really doing what it's supposed to. The picture directly across from it on the right, that's the same sprinkler heads, but it's been adjusted to the correct, it's not the same location, but it's a sprinkler head that's been adjusted to the correct pressure. And if you notice in the picture, you can actually see the droplets of water. On the left, where it's very misty, that's going to evaporate. It's not going to go on your lawn evenly. The one on the right with the heavier droplets, it's going to go where the water, where you want it to go. It's not going to be obstructed by wind as much. The way we find these things out is either through visual, or we can put a pressure gauge while your system's in the running mode, and it would tell us your dynamic pressure. We have these little T's and these little pressure gauges available to our customers if you ever wanted to check what your pressure was. Pretty easy to install, no special tools or no digging or anything like that. And finally, the picture on the bottom right are the high efficiency nozzles that we have rebates on, along with Otay Water District. We strongly encourage customers to use these nozzles. They apply water at a much slower rate. They put down heavier droplets, and they do work well with low pressure. A lot of times we have people complaining that their pressure is too low, the irrigation system's not working properly. So these are a good fix for that. So yes, you can have turf and still manage your water and still have an appropriate use of water, and your yard can be very efficient with your water usage. So let's go to the next slide, please. So how much water is my landscape using? That's my biggest question. The one on the left column there, that's their summertime usage. It's around 33 units. The category in blue, the column in blue, is their winter usage, which they're probably not irrigating as much. That's for their health, safety, and sanitation needs. So that's their baseline, and the difference would be probably what they're putting on their landscape. So if you request a history report from your water district, that will help you clue in on what your landscape's actually using when you compare the two. Next slide, please. You are the water manager for your property. I would highly encourage you to get to know your water meter, your history report. There are some devices out nowadays that can help you manage your water even better than the way we used to do it. So if you really want to know what your water is using, you're going to have to take some meter reads. It's going to require some little bit of leg work. You take a read before you start irrigating. You take a read after you finish irrigating, and then you take those numbers. Every rotation of that red hand is going to move the numbers on the far right registry, one revolution. So right now we're at zeros. If that red hand goes around one time, it's going to go to 1, again 2, and each thing you would just say, okay, it went around 7 times, 7 times 7.5. That would tell you how many gallons of water you just used for your irrigation cycle. You can also use alternative water sources, your warm-up water from your shower, your kitchen sink, your laundry water, as Bob mentioned, the laundry to landscape. We do have a rebate for that for Sweetwater customers. Your rainwater, you can catch that in your rain barrels or your cisterns. Also rebates available. Check with your local, your water agency to see if they have rebates on those. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So here, just want to know, is there a problem with this water bill here? This is a customer's bill that we went out to a property. As you can see, it's about a year and a half worth of data. They're going from 35, the far right is how much units of water they use, 35, 39, 41, 36, 42, and so on. So right off the bat, when I look at that, it's telling me that they're not adjusting their irrigation control at all. It's basically set it and forget it. So first thing I'm going to do is go to their controller and look at their settings, recommend a good setting for them, and have them manage and maintain, or talk to their landscaper and say, hey, we need to do a better job at managing our water usage. Next slide, please. Here's a customer that did one of our turf removal programs. We really appreciate it. As you can see, it cut their water savings in half, and it should drop as that plant material on the right gets more mature. That's just a real quick snapshot of a turf removal. All right, next slide. Some tools to help with water efficiency: check valves, screwdrivers, soil probes, rain sensors, soil moisture sensors, a soil probe or a shovel or a screwdriver. If you can press that into the soil more than 4 or 5 inches, that's where the roots typically are for turf. If it goes beyond that, you're probably overwatering it. You can dial it back. The check valve on the left there, if you have a slope that you're irrigating and you've got 300 or 400 feet of irrigation line, once you turn off your irrigation, all that water is going to drain out of that line to the lowest head. It's called low head drainage. Place the check valve on that low head. It will stop that water from draining out of your head. Keep that line charged. You don't have to fill that line every time you irrigate. All right, next slide, please. So again, rebates, Sweetwater Authority has specific rebates for customers. Otay Water District has their specific rebates. I would highly encourage you to reach out to myself or the folks over at Otay. If you have questions, concerns, there's multiple resources out there. The website at Chula Vista again, the Conservation Garden out at Cuyamaca College, Sweetwater's website, Otay District's website. So with that, I believe I'm just about finished. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back over to our host.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, Doug and Bob earlier. I want to encourage folks while you're checking out this contact info here, if you have any questions, to please look at the bottom of your screen and scroll over the bottom. You may see a Q&A thing down there, and you can then type in your question. So far, we have one question from Carla, and I think it's probably for Doug. She'd like to know, how do you flush drip irrigation systems?
Hopefully, when it was installed, at the end of the line, there typically is a cap that you can unscrew. And basically, when you unscrew that cap, it opens up your drip, then you turn it on at the valve, and it will flush that whole entire system out. If it doesn't have a cap, typically it's folded over or crimped at the end. You would either just have to remove that crimp, flush the line, and then refold it over and crimp it again so it doesn't leak out the end. But hopefully they should always put an end cap at the end of the line for that specific reason, to flush them out.
Excellent. I don't see any questions here, but I'm gonna wait a minute or two and see if anyone else that's on the line may still have some questions, either about NatureScape, irrigation, or any rebates, or any of that great information. Otherwise, while we're waiting for that, I think our next slide may have the schedule. Yep, you may have missed it at the beginning. Again, thank you for participating in this week's Summer Sustainability Series webinar. We have 5 remaining webinars in our series. They're listed up on the screen right now. And if you missed it earlier, these are all being recorded. So you can always check back at that same website at the bottom and check out any of the recordings you may have missed, or if you missed some information and you wanted to go back and listen to it. Usually it's there, I would say at the latest, the following Monday after the webinar. So we already have a little collection going. So please feel free to check it out. Any final questions before we call it a day? Not really seeing any. So thanks again. We really appreciate your attendance, and thanks for supporting our Summer Sustainability Series. Thanks, everyone.